What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Real Estate Uncensored. This is the place where you learn how to attract an audience online, build influence, and create more ideal clients. And we have a wonderful repeat guest. Actually, it's my first time with this guest, so I'm really excited. Byron Van Arsdale. Holy cow, that is quite a name. That is the name of someone who owns a manor in England. So I'm curious to ask him about the manor and when do I get to stay at it. But before we bring Byron in, we've got Greg McDaniel firmly ensconced in the co-pilot seat where he so belongs, very, very, very far away from me, living in his virtual box like he should. Greg McDaniel, what's up today?
You shut your mouth when you talk to me, Johnson. Okay, and listen to me. No, it's gonna be a good show. I love having Byron on. Byron has a wealth of knowledge, and it's just gonna be an absolute blast. Before in the pre-show, which you guys didn't get to hear, unfortunately, we should really start recording those because they're absolutely freaking hilarious, and then burn the recordings.
You want to talk about not suitable for public consumption?
Yeah, but all of you guys that are listening, not watching, I showed Byron and Matt my brand new T-shirt that I'm wearing that my girlfriend bought me. It is a picture of Santa Claus holding a bag, and it says, "I do it for the hose." Ho, 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 ho. And yes, my girlfriend's got a hilarious sense of humor. But for all you guys listening, you get a giggle. Go find some funny shirts. Matt is trying to change my personality. He's trying to take the Greg out of Greg. He's trying to make me a Matt drone. And Greg, this is not suitable. I do not accept that. I don't identify with that.
That's right. You just need to reframe it. I'm just helping you tell a better story to yourself, a story that involves custom dress shirts and you having a haircut. That's all I want to do.
I have a hair. Look, I got a haircut. I just don't want to show it off.
Yeah, exactly. So we're talking about how to tell yourself a better story. We've got a bunch of fun stuff to get into. I'm sure this episode will take many, many twists and turns. But Byron, for those that may not know you, go ahead and just maybe give like a 60-second bio, who you are, where you are, what you do.
Well, I know Greg McDaniel, so that's about all I need to say about that. Yeah. Bernice Ross is my wife, and everyone knows her. No one knows me. Business coach, love to play golf. And as you can tell by the laughter of me giggling as soon as we started, you can tell kind of how sense of humor is kind of fun for me. So let's see. What else can I say? Like to bake, like to cook. Great guy.
Yeah. All around great guy. Now, when you say business coach, who do you enjoy coaching the most?
I primarily work with agents, specifically either new, actually experienced, or top producers. It really kind of varies. Mm-hmm. But that's generally who I've been working with since about 1996.
Yeah. Well, why do they typically, like, what's the impetus? What's the catalyst for them typically running across you specifically to where you end up working with them?
Well, the only reason anybody ever finds me is because they know Bernice Ross. That's the only way. Apparently,
you have built-in lead generation. It's fantastic.
Well, it is built-in lead generation, but apparently my first coach told me, Byron, you're the best kept secret I have ever known. So there's something about me and marketing, that really is kind of like, oh, whatever. I just, so people who find me come through Real Estate Coach, and they find me through Bernice.
That's hilarious. Well, I love it. And so we're going to get into telling yourself a story, but clearly you've told yourself a story about marketing, and maybe that can change at some point.
Absolutely. Yeah, Matt,
but it is interesting. Point. Yeah, well, we always tell ourselves a story. I mean, I was telling myself a story this morning about Facebook ads. I was, we all have them. And it is funny that it doesn't dawn on you until somebody says that. And you're like, oh, wait a minute. That's literally just a story that passed through my brain that now I'm somehow identifying with the truth. And that's, all it is a thought. It passes through, it's fleeting. But man, we identify with them, and then they solidify, like someone being turned into a pillar of salt. They all of a sudden become rock solid and something that sticks us, almost like concrete. So let's talk about that a little bit, because we're talking in the pre-show. Greg, thanks for the graphic. What story are you telling yourself? So Byron, you gave a really great example. So let's start with that. Just the super practical example that you gave of walking through a house with a buyer and they bring up something is wrong with the cabinets. How do you reframe that?
So the difference between the experienced agent and the newer agent is the newer agent really wouldn't understand that they have a phenomenal amount of options as soon as someone, as soon as they're working with a buyer. So in this situation, Matt, the buyer says, hey, I hate the cabinets or the carpets, or, you could, whatever it is. Those avocado counters from 1970s, I just hate them. So the experienced agent would say, would you replace the counters or would you completely redesign the kitchen? Or they would give them a couple different options just to simply see what is it that the buyer would actually do. So instead of attaching to the buyer's story, which is I hate it, and most likely anyone with any amount of sensibility would see avocado counters today and say, what were you thinking? They go, you got to be kidding me. Why would you do that? So, this ability to ask simply a different question, say, would you change them this way or would you change them that way, is something really designed to actually spark in the buyer, do they have any commitment for what they're doing? So when someone has raised this an objection inside of the sales process, they're really kind of, saying to the agent, I'm kind of interested in this, because if they didn't care one whit about the house, they wouldn't raise the issue at all. Or it would be kind of a throwaway line, where they just say, wow, I haven't seen counters like that since the 1970s.
That's interesting. So, Greg, you want to comment or break that down a little bit for me?
Yeah.
Like, when you hear an example like that and you think about it in terms of reframing the story, what does that set off in your brain, and how can we expand that so that people can maybe start to use that in other ways so that you can handle those types of objections on the fly when it's not that identical objection?
Right. I've had the honor to work with Bernice, and she and I work heavily with Inman News and putting out content. And I've had the opportunity to be coached by Byron. And, they have drilled this into my brain. And I never really thought about it before, because our typical response to that would be, oh, yeah, I hate those avocado cabinets too. I can't. Those are horrible. What do you want to do? Oh, I want to go find a house with better cabinets. Well, damn. Okay. Well,
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go somewhere else.
Like, now, once you've agreed, you're sunk.
You're screwed. And but we all do it subconsciously, because we want to please our buyers, we want to please our sellers. But what you're doing is you're reframing the context, but you're still keeping them in that same property. You're like Byron said, would you remodel just the cabinets, or would you do the whole kitchen, or would you paint the cabinets, or just tear them out? It's just taking that and having the ability to twist it. So if you're out with your significant other or something, and you guys are out and about somewhere, and they're like, I hate this pasta at this place. Oh, okay. Well, would you want to get some breadsticks with it, or would you rather would you like to eat my dinner? It's not like, oh, fuck, this place sucks. All right, screw you, Olive Garden. We're out of here. And we go over to Taco Bell, right? It's just about, understanding, letting the person know that they're heard, but not giving them an out solely based upon one thing, right? You can't I hate these drapes, or this bedroom is painted purple. I hate purple. Okay, a thing called Kelly Moore and Home Depot and Ace Hardware, they sell paint. I'll buy it. It's $20. Here you go. What color do you want to do it?
But it is interesting, like putting it, there's a couple of things that you're doing, Byron, that are really interesting, because you are, it's very, very verbal Aikido, right? So they put out this energy that this isn't the right place. Like, this is like, there's things wrong here that I don't like. And if you came back with them with something like, yeah, but you can paint it, like that is, you put something out and I push back. What you were talking about is asking them, number one, you're asking a question, and you're asking a question in such a way that gives 2 yes answers. And the story is like, it's all framed within the story of, oh, well, how would you make this your own?
Right.
Which is really interesting. There's so much going on there, just in that little question.
Matt, it's interesting because, in sales, the objection is really a golden opportunity. Because when someone gives you an objection, what they're really saying is, look, I really like this, except. So the communication, if you're new to sales, is you would hear an objection as, oh, they don't like it. But the experienced agent hears it and says, oh, well, that means you like something. Because, especially in today's culture, if you don't like something, look, I don't even bother with Yelp. I just don't go. I'm done. They would never know. I don't waste my time with that. But when you really like some place, you go to the extra effort to say, look, you got a problem with your service. You got a problem with this. So it's the same thing for the agent, is when they hear a buyer say this, it ought to be lighten up a big flag for them, just say, hey, okay, I need to explore right here. So the question allows you just to go in and ask a little bit. But also, as with any good question, is when you talk to a buyer or a seller, is it allows them to tell you what it is they're really looking for. So the question's kind of like a hook, and when you get an objection, it's just a really convenient hook to say, well, tell me more. And as soon as you start hearing what they like, what they don't like, and everything else like that, then less trips, less everything else.
Yeah.
You really get, and I guess the bottom line I should say is what you really do is you help the buyer make a better and informed decision about their purchase, because they may be caught on that. I mean, look, I could have used blue shag carpeting, I could have used any of those. But if you really understand what someone's looking for and you help them make a better decision, I think that's one of the ultimate goals of every really good real estate agent, is they help their buyers and sellers make better decisions.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, we do it on a daily basis, and so we also know, like, okay, the cabinets might suck, they might have blue shag carpet, whatever the snag is, right? There's no landscaping in the backyard. You can always put a silver lining onto that and say, you know what, here's the beautiful part about it. You guys can either remodel the kitchen or just go down and get a can of paint and get some new hardware, and it's going to look like a brand new kitchen without having to spend a lot of money. I mean, but because if if that's the right location and the right amenities and it checks a lot of the boxes, and people are just telling them a story because they watch HGTV too much, and because they get told they should have it perfect. Stacy and Bob, he raises salamanders and she's a school teacher, and they want a $2.1 million home close to the river so Bob can raise his salamanders, but Stacy needs to stay close to the city. Matt is literally putting his head down into this microphone. But I mean, here's the thing. The story they're telling. He's
your friend. Okay. I just want you to know he's your friend, Matt.
Yes. I'm very privileged to count him as one of my best friends. And I can totally see him retiring to the hills of California to raise salamanders. I'm just saying that didn't come from nowhere. I'm just saying it didn't come from nowhere. It has to be something Greg's been thinking about. That's all I'm saying.
Now, Matt, before we go over this, what Greg just did was he gave a reframe to the buyer to consider different options. And that's really what this part about telling story is. So instead of looking for, is the story right or wrong or good or bad or anything else like that, what you're really looking for is, what is the not dialogue or narrative or story that the buyer is saying? And again, we could substitute in seller just as easily. And we can expand way beyond this as well, but we'll leave it for real estate.
Yeah.
I mean, look, everybody tells stories. I joked about, I hate Facebook. Definitely. That's a story. Yeah. That's all it is. It isn't true. It's a story.
You know what, Byron? That sparks something that came in my head this week. And forever and a day, Matt has been teaching on not YouTube, on LinkedIn, on how to get business from LinkedIn. And I always thought it was really stupid. I'm like, LinkedIn is. I did. Okay, I'm wrong. And so I told myself a story. I'm like, LinkedIn is so antiquated. It is so dumb. It is so useless. Well, I had my eyes opened up this week to LinkedIn and how powerful it is. So I have been telling myself a story since the beginning of time of like how useless LinkedIn is. Then I was shown how powerful it could be. And I'm like, now I'm telling myself a new story. Now I'm saying how great Matt has always been. And I have been giving him the wrong credit. So Matt, publicly, I am sorry.
It's good to know that like a good chunk of our live class we gave at one point, you're sitting there just going, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Okay. So Byron, I want to pitch you a thornier situation because so I want to ask you a question about how do you handle an objection to the way that you run your real estate business and the way that you communicate with clients. Because I want you to handle reframing something where it's not actually negotiable, right? Kitchen countertops is something they could legitimately change. It's literally something that they could change out if they wanted to. But let's say their objection is more to the fact that, look, when I work with a seller, I do all of my client calls with every seller on Tuesday afternoon. That's when I update you on the market. That's when we go over any changes to the marketing strategy, yada, yada, yada. Like, that's how I run my business. And they go, oh, like, I'm not really available on Tuesday. That might be a deal breaker. So they basically push back against something about your service that you don't want to change. Mm-hmm. How would you suggest people reframe that? And what kind of question could they ask that would get the client to think about that differently?
Well, given that, Greg is on this, I'm going to go with the more irreverent, fun part of this first. Okay. And that is, I would just say, clearly, I'm not the right agent for you. Have a great day. I've got a great referral for you to deal with someone else. Honestly, I mean, look, some agents actually are going to hear that and they're going to say, no, you can't get rid of an agent. I mean, a buyer, you can't. No, you can't have. No, you can't do that. Look, the truth is that you can create your business any way you want. Okay, now that said, Matt, let's go actually and answer it a little bit more specifically and say, this is a great client. You don't want to lose the client.
Right.
So what you say is, great. What would work for you? Generally, this is what I do, and I can understand how we might have a challenge, but what would work for you? Could I give you a fax update? Could I give you an email update? Could I give you a text update? You know, what else could we do? So it becomes kind of a little bit of a negotiation, I think, at that point, you know, where you say, okay, what other options are available? Then once you discover that, then you can sit there and say, great, I like this client. I don't like this client. I'm going to shift what I do. I won't shift what I do.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I think what I was getting at was, I think they're telling themselves, like, we have to realize that they're telling themselves a story in that moment. Like, for example, oh, we're only going to talk once a week. So that the story they might be telling themselves is, you're not available when I need you. You're like, well, you know, if we talk every week, but then when there's a contract comes in, we're going to talk whenever we need to get that contract negotiated. Right. Does that make a difference? Like, oh, well, yeah, that totally answers the question. Okay, great. You know, like, you thinking about the story they might be telling themselves helps you ask a question that kind of uncovers that, and then it gives you some wiggle room on negotiation, because it may not be an issue with them talking with you every Tuesday. The issue may be they're telling themselves a story that means you're only available on Tuesday, even if a contract comes in. You're like, no, that's not even remotely true. So so just understanding, like, asking rather than pushing back with energy, asking the question to draw out that story. And then once the story is out on the table, then you can go, oh, well, here's a way that we can reframe that. The way that I like to look at weekly communication is it makes sure that you are 100% comfortable knowing that there is never a time when you don't have a scheduled call with me. You never have to guess on when you're going to hear from me. Now, we'll talk in between that if a contract comes in or an emergency comes up, which, by the way, never happens in real estate. But you know that you're going to talk to me every single Tuesday. You know, like, that kind of scripting can completely destroy that and keep someone that might be a legitimately good client.
Right. Now, let's change this a little bit, because we'll change the story a little bit. Let's say that the seller says, look, what you need to know is every Tuesday afternoon and evening, I spend time with my mother, who's in a adult care home. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, what the agent says is, got it. Understood. Okay.
Like, so now that the story is there, it's like, okay, great. I just adjust. Yeah.
And what's funny is oftentimes we come into situations, right, and we'll immediately get upset over something, only later to find out that there was something really unusual about the situation. So let's say a client is late, or, I mean, you could pick about 100 different, and all of a sudden you realize what was behind that. Then all of a sudden you have no energy and you go, okay, great. So you're right. So the adaptability or flexibility is great. Now, a slightly different approach would be to say, okay, look, I'm sorry. I spend time with my kids. So after 7 o'clock at night, I don't take phone calls. You just need to know that. So you can leave me a message. I just want you to know I may see it, I may not, but I won't respond until 7 o'clock tomorrow morning. So if the agent makes those kind of let's say agreements with their buyers and sellers in advance, so at the earliest possible time, then what they can start to do is carve out their life and their business so that they don't overflow each other. Yeah. Now look, same thing. There's going to be crazy stuff. Somebody's going to wake up at 2 a.m. They're going to, oh my gosh, I don't know how to do this. And they're going to, it doesn't mean you have to respond to it. If you want to, great. I would say you're absolutely nuts, on this one, because look, most things are not getting done until the next day. But, this is what gives, how should I say, a kind of a individualized service, customer service that someone might do. It's like, look, my phone's on all night long, call me, and I just don't recommend it. I don't think it's sustainable. If you're young, I think you can get away with it. The older you get, or as soon as you have children, you realize it's not really sustainable.
Yeah, 100% agreed.
Well, when I was first got in the real estate business, I mean, that's exactly what I did tell everybody. I said, hey, you know, you guys can reach out to me 24/7, 365. If my phone isn't on, it's either dead or I'm sleeping. Either way, when I either power my phone up or wake up, I'll give you a call right back. You can call me anytime. I'm here to help. As I got older, I'm like, fuck this. And I said, this is how I work. I don't work the weekends. Don't call me. I'll work during the weekdays. And that's how I operate. You know, how would you like me to communicate with you? Text, email, phone, carrier pigeon, postal service. What works best for you? And I lay out how I'm going to work. I lay out the expectations, and I have never to this moment ever lost a client by explaining how I work with them, and then what they're going to see coming down the pipe. Because I say, you know what, the weekends are my family time and where I recharge. You wouldn't want to take that away from me, would you? And I shake my head, and all of them start doing this. No, we don't. But and then I'll have clients call me on the weekends, and they'll be like, "Hi, Greg, it's blah blah blah. I know. I know you don't work on the weekends, but we really need to see this house. Is it okay?" I'm like, "Okay, but I'm coming in shorts and flip flops and a hat." Oh, go, yeah, that's fine. We're casual too. You know, and then I roll over there and we have a good time. We get the home sold, but I lay out the expectations, and so that there isn't an issue with that, you know. And you know, I highly recommend, like Byron, you were saying, you know, don't allow complete and total access. Now it sounds counterintuitive to like how real estate should be run, but this is your business. You're not their bitch. Okay, big difference. And you cannot be dragged around by your nose, because Matt used to have nose rings. That's why I always say that, you know. And
wow, that came out of nowhere.
I know. I just heard nose, and I just thought it saw you, and I just thought nose ring. But
where's the graphic? I want the graphic.
I will get you a nose ring graphic, sir.
Oh my God.
But it is true. You got to protect your space. You got to protect your time. You know, I've been in the business for almost 21 years now. LinkedIn. Thank you, Matt. I went to LinkedIn, and it reminded me I've been in the business for 20 years and 7 months. You know, I was dragged around and I was beaten up. And every 7 years, if you allow yourself to be beaten up by your clients, you will have a burnout every 7 years. Yeah. And I've had 2 of them, you know, and it is horrible. Unneeded. My dad, the grandmaster, he worked so hard in his career. He literally had his retina detached twice because of his stress levels. That doesn't sound any fun. You got to protect your space. You got to lay out the rules. You got to, you know, tell the correct story. What are you telling about yourself? What are you telling about your clients? Once you understand what that is, you can be a happier individual.
Yeah. Now, Matt, let me add one other piece on this one. Look, every story is made up. Okay, I'm not worried about right, wrong, good, bad, or anything else. But if we consider that every story, a great example is there's a glass ceiling at 100,000 GCI, you know, for commission salespeople, and somehow some people get through it, some people don't. Men, women, they bump up against it. But somehow, once you get through 100,000 GCI in a year, then basically you can make 150, 200, 250. And it's all of a sudden like, what happened? Why was it so hard to get to this number? Or if I'm in golf, how is it that it took me so long to break 100, but now I do it regularly and don't even think about it. So these stories that we tell each other, you know, I mean, look, we're a story. I mean, as a human race, we live based on our stories. The great thing to realize is that if we know we're telling a story, it gives us the access to be able to say, maybe I don't like that story. So another example might be New Year's resolutions. I'm going to do this year. And then then someone close to you, you know, reminds you, oh, do you realize how many years in a row you've said you're going to do this? And you realize how many years in a row you never did it. And you were at the gym for 3 days, you know, and then by the 9th of January, you were done with the gym. So what's interesting, though, is that if you actually take a look at this, you say, wow, I write these stories. What if I just write a different story? And what if I create some of the underpinnings that I'll need to make sure that I lived up to the story I want to tell? And so, you know, look, the great thing about people in real estate is they actually, you know, they've gone after controlling their life, their income, their life, their business, all aspects of it. Why not tell the best story possible? Why not reframe what you're doing and say, you know what, this whole thing about 100,000 GCI, Byron says that's a joke. It's an illusion. Why don't I act like it's an illusion?
Mm-hmm.
And what would I need to do? And it's not very difficult. I'm going to go do some more prospecting. I'm going to figure out where I get my deals from. I'm just going to get more deals.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to worry about anything else. I'll just crank my deals. I'm just going to dip my head down, put my nose in the grindstone and go. And guess what? One day they'll wake up, they'll go past 100K and they'll go, what was I telling myself this?
Yeah.
Why couldn't I get above that?
It's to circle back to health. About 2 weeks ago, I was really not feeling very healthy, and I looked at my eating habits. I looked at my consumption of alcohol, and I looked at a couple of other things, and I'm like, wow, I'm off kilter here. And so I made a public declaration this week that I'm going to run every single day. Now, I did. I ran 4 miles, 4 days a week, and one day only ran 2.7 miles. But I held myself accountable, and because I changed my narrative, I stopped telling myself that it was too hard to run, it was too early to run. I got up a little earlier. I made a pot of coffee. I drank a little coffee, and then I went out, hit the road. Then I told myself, "Well, Greg, you can only do 75 push-ups." Then I'm like, "No, I can't. I can do 100." Next day, I did 4 miles and 100 push-ups. Then next day, 120. Then today I did 150 push-ups, so at 4.2 miles. It's because I changed what I was telling myself. Yeah. And it was so impactful. And just there, it's teaching me massive lessons in real estate and other things. Like next week, we're launching a massive campaign for prospecting and for EXP recruiting. And it's because I changed the story, like, oh, I can't do this, or maybe I'm just not good at it, or whatever the narrative was. I said, no, that's not a true narrative anymore. I refuse to accept that story. My story, my truth is now this. And then I just went out and did it. Oh, by the way, I dug through the archives, guys. I found a picture of Matt modeling days, and when he had his nose ring in.
Wow, with a handlebar mustache and a nose ring. That's impressive, Greg.
Matt, I like the smolder. I like that. That was a good.
That's right. Well, I've worked hard to perfect it.
Well, Matt, it's a good look. Buddy.
So Greg, Matt, let's pull this back a little bit, because there is another great story that I've heard. So one of the things that I do is I lead monthly coaching calls for new agents. And one of the things that I constantly challenge agents on is, I don't have the experience. I don't have the business. I haven't been in the business very long. And Greg, what you just said was phenomenal, because I tell them, I said, look, one of the things that you need to know is that there's like these phases that agents go through. They go from novice, new to the business, then kind of this experienced part, then they get to be experienced, and then they go on to top producers. But something happens in this experienced part, where all of a sudden agents, and this was my experience, start to think they don't need to do what they did to get to where they were right then and there. So they start thinking about, no, I don't need to prospect, or I don't need to do this, or I've made it and I've done this. And so they start telling a different story. But the new agents, I tell them, I said, look, I did one of my best deals as a completely new agent who knew nothing about what he was doing, simply because I actually just kind of asked the question. It was just like, that was it. I mean, it's really, so I tell them, I said, look, I don't care how many months experience you do or don't have. I don't care what you know, how many deals you've done, or anything else. Your goal, your focus needs to be on your client and what the concerns they have. So this is really, this is why I've seen people who go into sales who absolutely seem to know nothing, but they simply focus their attention on their clients to figure out what it is they do need, what it is they like, what they don't like. And then they go back to their office and say, help, I have no idea how to write a contract. I've never worked with a $1.5 million sale. I have no idea how to do this. How do we do raw land transactions? What do we do in commercial sales? You can go back. It's amazing. The people who run the real estate offices, the broker, the owner broker, the manager, generally are very, very experienced people who can figure stuff out. And they have their team, their professional team. So there almost isn't anything that a new agent can't figure out. They just don't know it's sitting in front of a client. So again, I tell them, I said, look, you're going to be far better served, and you'll get much better and make much more money in this business if you simply start asking a heck of a lot more questions instead of trying to prove to people how smart you are, blah, blah, blah. And what Greg just said was, after 20 years and 7 months, he kind of says, I really, that whole thing about proving myself, no, that's kind of, that's long gone. So I do believe that there's an ability here for people to tell a different story when they walk into this business. It doesn't mean they know everything, but I can guarantee you, if you give me a new agent, and depending on what their background is, I can show you probably a complementary skill set that they've developed in some other area of their life. I don't care if they've been off in Africa, working for, charity, etc. I don't care if it's a mom or a father raising children. I don't care if they were in business. I don't care. It doesn't matter what they were in, but they develop these complementary skill sets. So if they just get pretty quick about asking questions instead of trying to prove how smart they are or prove why somebody needs to hire them, then they'll do quite well.
So even Steve, who raises salamanders, then he knows the waterways in the area,
Yep.
Yeah, I got really
Fish
fortunate.
and Game is calling his number. Okay, they want him. They said, "Look, we need an expert." All right.
Oh, exactly. If I ever have an occasion to call a salamander expert, something has gone terribly, terribly wrong.
Right. Look, it's a story. Okay, Matt, it's a story.
Sure, that's okay. That's true. That's true. The thing about like asking questions, I got really fortunate when I first got into real estate. My buddy and I, who got in the same time, we got a real estate coaches program. He's not in the business anymore. I think he actually passed away since. And but he had a really great program that taught you how to take listings, and it was consultative based. So his system was to go in with a set of questions and a legal pad and basically just ask a ton of good questions. And that changed everything. Like, you talk about somebody getting into the business, understanding that it wasn't that I had to have all the answers, that it was more important to have better questions and then to let them talk. Like that change, like that allowed me to tell myself a different story, that no, I could go in as a brand new agent and take expired listings that other agents failed to sell. If I hadn't run across that program, I would have never told myself that story just through sheer confidence in myself. I would have had no reason to be confident. It was getting that program and looking at it and going, yes, I bet that works. And then going into a listing presentation and go, wow, that worked. It changed the story that I told myself. And from that time, like it made a huge difference. And we took a bunch of listings and stuff. But yeah, that makes such a huge difference, understanding that the story that you tell yourself, and knowing that it's not about having all the answers. It's a lot of times about asking better questions. So I love that, just how it ties into the compare. It kind of circles back to what we talked about right off the bat, that reframing the story a lot of times involves asking just better questions, better structured questions.
Yeah, Matt, it's kind of funny, and Greg, my biggest, I think, issue that I faced in my entire life, and I believe it's almost the issue that everyone else faces, is they ask the wrong question. So if we're looking at a process of self-improvement and growth and getting better at what we do, invariably what I found is over the years, and I don't know, 1996, I think, is when I started actually working with clients like this, as a business coach, is they've always ended up saying blah, 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 blah. And I said, that's the wrong question. And they go, what do you mean? So, well, you're trying to answer a question that you can't answer. The question makes no sense. What about, and I would reframe the question a little bit, and they go, oh, that makes total sense. So, Matt, if we go back to what you just said, you came across something that said, look, why don't I just ask what the seller is interested in, what they're challenged with, and where they want to go and what they want to accomplish. And then as I listen, I should be able to understand and see the path that they're moving down, which means I can use what I know in real estate in drawing my team, et cetera, and provide this gentleman or this woman with better information so they can make a better decision. So it wasn't about you being confident or not confident. In other words, if you'd said, how do I, look, I hear this often. I'm a new agent. How do I gain confidence? And I said, well, you don't worry about it. And they go, what? What? No, I have to have confidence. I've been to 3 classes that tell me I need to be more confident in what I do. And I go, yeah, you do. You're just going about it completely the wrong way. Yeah. Now, how can you be more present? How can you create better rapport with your client? These are valuable questions that you want to ask. So Matt, what you said, really was a beautiful story about, hey, and the consultative approach is very much what is current, and it is the model right now for, I don't care what type of sales. Mm-hmm. The consultative sales is really, it's the model. How do I help you make a better decision? What do you need? What are you looking for? And then working someone through that process to reach a better decision.
Yeah. I've been reading the book again. I started my own little book club. Yay, Greg, the Dyslexic Book Club. And it is
dyslexic. Matt, is that a book club of one? I'm trying to figure out.
It might be, but book club has to be spelled with a K. I mean, that's just the way it goes. I mean, the Dyslexic Book Club. That's hilarious.
Oh my God, you jerk. But I'm reading the book again called Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. Yeah. And I'm really studying each of these chapters. And I think I've listened to chapter 6 probably 25 times, if not more. And it's called He Finds a Guide. And it's talking about how we all try to be the heroes in the story. When the client needs to be the hero, we are the guide leading them through the process. And that entails asking better questions. That entails telling a better story. That's showing leadership through this. And Byron, what you were just saying kind of really sparked kind of a thought on that, because I mean, when we're telling ourselves a story, like we're new, we don't know what we're doing, we've never done a land deal. Like right now, I'm involved in 2 deals, one of 5 million, one of 2 million, well, 2.1 million, and they're builders buying both of them. Now, I had to learn what the fuck is an option. How does that work? What are these timelines? What are the ramifications if these aren't met? And I have high tensions on all sides. I've never done those, but I didn't say I couldn't do it. I said, okay, I got to go talk to someone who's really freaking smart. And I went and talked to my dad, who's done lots and lots of option deals. And he's like, this is how it's going to be laid out. I'm like, oh, and I didn't tell myself I couldn't do it. I just said, okay, here's the problem. I worked the problem. I got to the end. So many people get afraid of the problem. And one of my favorite quotes in the movie, it says, work the problem. And I just think about that phrase, work the problem. Mm-hmm. And it could be, I'm a new agent. Okay, there's the problem. Let's work it. How do we become better? Watching Real Estate Uncensored, on just replay consistently, going to education, reading books, hitting up Byron, not calling Matt, he won't call you back. But I mean, everything else is something that's going to be beneficial. Matt's smiling. But I mean, if you just work the problem, then you'll tell yourself a different story, then you'll ask better questions, you'll get better results, and you won't be afraid of it anymore. The fear goes away. Light and dark cannot exist in the same place. It is absolutely impossible. So get rid of the dark, replace it with light. I can push through this. It's very simple, but people just don't think about it.
It's true. Well, yeah, and that was going to be my question too, Byron. It's like, how do you build the skill set of reminding yourself to reframe things? I don't know if there's anything that's worked for you.
Well, okay, so Matt, that is a great question, and generally so generally about the time you start seeing a little bit of blood come drip.
And then he pauses. That's perfect.
And you kind of go, okay, wait a minute. Maybe there's a better approach. So, a little bit more serious on this would be to look, the unusual part is sometimes it's really good to step out of yourself. Or it's really kind of, get some distance from what you're doing. However you do that. Sometimes people do it during meditation. Sometimes they go on long runs. They find something that allows them to just kind of take a whole different perspective and basically, said, okay, why don't we rethink this? One of the things that I've noticed that good coaches do for their clients is allow them to see something completely different, a perspective. So if you're sitting here banging your head against the wall on something, and maybe that's a great question. We should ask, what is, just to see if we can spark some queries in here, is what is one challenge you face around real estate? Is that to kind of look at something and stop and ask a question. is there a different way I could do this? What's a different story I could tell about this? Is the story I'm telling something that supports me to be better at what I'm doing? So if I'm a new agent, am I worried about being seen as a professional? Am I worried about being seen as like a good person? Or am I worried about, do I deliver what is asked and needed of me? So sometimes this ability to query, and look, this is where, look, no one needs a coach. I'm just going to flat out say that you do not need a coach. Matter of fact, if you need a coach, you really shouldn't be getting a coach. What you're looking for is someone who can support you to be better and challenge you. I mean, one of the things that we talked a lot about, that we really haven't included in this whole thing is when you challenge a client, when they say something or do something, you say, no, we're not really going to do that. An interesting example, is an Op City lead comes in. I'm talking about a specific client of mine. Op City lead comes in, tells Op City they are not working with another agent. My client, very sharp, lots of years in the business, listens very, very carefully. And the buyer happens to say, I'll need to check with so-and-so. And she says, I'm sorry, would you please repeat that? Who is so-and-so? Oh, it's our agent. She says, I really appreciate our time, and there was a bunch of other stuff that happened around it. But basically what she said was, I really appreciate our time together. I can't help you any further because you already have an agent. Then the smart part is she calls back into Op City and says, this client lied to you. They're working with another agent. So Op City actually loves my client, but basically was something where she flat out confronted him on it and said, no, we're not going to, we're done. This is not going anywhere. So when you come across something, where you really, where it's really important for you to stand your ground, especially, look, agents have immense ethical considerations in everything they do, everything. And so being able to understand what your ethical boundaries are and what your legal boundaries are and to stay within those. Look, I just never understood the whole idea about, doing crazy stuff, illegal and, cutting corners. I just never, it's just not my thinking. So I never really had to worry about sleeping at night. But there are agents who do this. That's fine. I'm not talking to them. I'm talking to the agents who are very careful and meticulous about what they do, their reputation, their professional reputation, So every now and then it comes down where you really need to be able to tell the story that, okay, no, this is not going to work for me. Time to confront this. Yeah. So Matt, that was kind of a long answer, but I think as soon as you start experiencing a bunch of frustration around the path you're down, it's always good to say, why don't we just, take a small time out here, put yourself in time out and say, why don't we just review what we're doing? Why don't we review the questions we're asking? What is it that I'm seeing or I consistently bump into? And oftentimes, like I said, a partner, a spouse, someone, a best friend, someone who's really close and really knows you and really has your best interests in mind, can sit there and point things out that, and if you're willing to actually listen to it, then I think you can change your story pretty quickly. Otherwise, you'll keep banging your head. And don't worry, if you stay on the path you're on and you don't move off of it, don't worry. We call it the feather bat splat method. So the first time you get a whiff that you shouldn't be doing this, then it's a feather. It's a light brush. The next time you get hit with a baseball bat, if you continue doing what you're really not supposed to be doing, and I'll let our listeners kind of determine this one. Then what happens is the Mack truck runs over you, backs up. About the time you start smelling the diesel fumes and the burnt rubber tires, you'll know that you've gone a little bit too far down the path.
Oh my God, that's true though. I agree. Yeah. That's something that because I've been rereading Psycho-Cybernetics for the millionth time or whatever since I got that book, and he just talks about how there was a gentleman that he quoted that said his best piece of advice his dad ever gave him was that use frustration to your advantage by turning it into a signal to respond by using frustration as a trigger that then creates a response. And you train that to where whenever you feel frustration, you step back and you start to reframe it in a positive way. There are some other things that were specific to that example, but I think that that's something that I've been working on, and I wish I would have known that in my, let's say, teens and 20s, because I experienced a lot of the frustration.
No, you can't say that. Look, there's no take backs. There's no going backwards. Look, I'm telling you. Okay, so Matt, I got a few years on you. Just saying, you want to relish the years that you made those mistakes. So look, and this is for everybody. Honestly, this is for everybody. You want to relish the years you made the mistakes. You do not want to wish that you could actually have done this. I completely concur with your thought. I've had the thought, and I'm finally of a mind that if we don't have, like, each of us have, if we could, let's just consider our life like a tapestry, okay? And Matt, you have a tapestry, that you've woven in life. It's your experience, it's your mistakes or your successes. All of those things come into play. Greg has one, I have one. And it isn't that until we start getting farther down the road that we can actually look back upon our tapestry, our mistakes, our successes, those things, and have kind of a more, let's just say, distanced look at them, in a distance view of them, to be able to say, oh, I understand why that happened. Look, I've had baseball bats, I've had feathers, and I certainly have more than my fair share of Mack trucks. I would have thought I would have my international, commercial license by now, for how many Mack trucks I've had. But it is those things, though, that prep us to get what you're talking about in psychocybernetics, where that's what actually creates the trigger, or the, like, oh, I know this now. I know what it is.
Oh, look, gotcha. Yeah, that is true. The pain of making the mistakes in the past is what helps condition the response going forward.
Right. And the farther we get down the road from the incident, the more we glean the truth and the beauty of the incident, rather than just the pain. Because close to the incident, you have tons and tons and tons of pain, which clouds everything. Greg talked about the light and the dark. Well, pain is another aspect in here. As soon as you start to pull the pain away, what you realize, look, I'm married to Bernice Ross. I just want you to know, I could have screwed that up totally. And fortunately for me, I had enough pain and enough situations that when I saw the most amazing woman in my life show up, I said, you know what? This is a smart move. So when you look, when you get to this point, I mean, fortunately, look, Matt, if I hadn't had those experiences, I might have said, Dr. Ross, whatever, but no, now. So look, it really is, we want to embrace that's why this part, the question that you asked about, how do you know when you need to start reframing stuff? You really want to learn to embrace the frustration. I mean, really kind of embrace it and say, okay, what am I learning from this? What can I learn from it? Which is different than how do I stop it? And that's why I said most people are asking the wrong question. If they're in a relationship, if they're in a deal that's going sideways, invariably they're asking the wrong question. And so there's so many, I mean, the ability to ask a really good question just blows open opportunities, possibilities, etc.
Yeah.
And like I said, your story was fabulous, where you said, oh, look, I just need to ask questions. Wow. Who would have thought that would have worked? And years later now you're going, well, duh, of course. If you ask questions, you get to know what they want. It's easy to work, right? You just have to come across it early in your career. Yeah. So the reason I keep saying this is I hope anybody who's listening to this is going to go back to that segment and say, I want to hear Matt say one more time what he did, because maybe that would be helpful for me.
How do you we'll do one more question and then we got to wrap it up, but give people an idea of what a right question could look like.
Yeah, almost invariably the right question is the one you don't want to answer. Almost invariably.
Oh, geez.
Right.
Well,
it's the one where you saw me earlier going, no, you don't want that. When Matt said, oh, if I'd only known when I was in my teens, I said, no, Matt, because you would probably had a very different life experience with a whole bunch of other things that you might have done.
Right.
So look,
that's true.
The question that you start to shy from, look, one of the common questions that a coach will ask is more aspirational questions of a client, where do you want to go? What do you want to accomplish? In the larger, in the bigger, in the more huge that my goal is, generally the more powerful as a motivator it is for the client to perform. In other words, and get results. And so when they say, let's say they're making, they make 150,000 a year GCI, gross commission income. And they go, you know what? I think it might be nice to make 170. And, and I've told people, I said, look, you don't want to work with me. And they say, why? I said, because you don't need me. You could go from 150 to 170 in your sleep without even trying. And I go, well, what do you mean? I said, do the percentages. I mean, it is from 150 to 170, right? That is a small incremental change. Somebody does one more listing, they do one more sale, a couple more throughout the year, and they've gone there. I had a client once who told me, she had made, in her third year in the business, she'd made 8 million in gross sales, right? 8 million gross sales, right? And so I said, okay. And she said, what do I want to do next year? And she said, I'm thinking about doing, 15, maybe about double. I said, really? I was thinking more like 23 million was closer to what she'd make. And she goes, no, I can't do that. So Matt, story, right? She goes, no, I can't do that. I'm blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And then guess what? She ends up at about 26 million. Oh. Now, so for someone listening to this, look, you realize in your market share, if you happen to work with 1.5 to $5 million properties, jumping from 8 million, to 16 million to 25 million is really not, it's doable.
Yeah.
Right, Greg? It's pretty doable to do that. So it does mean you got to get better. It does mean you got to crank your deals. Yet that said, it's very doable. So, look, I don't care if somebody made $250,000 gross sales and then jumped it up to 450,000. Okay, it's the same jump in there. But basically, look, when you start telling yourself a story and you actually start believing it, that it is both, it's a two-edged sword. It can work for you and against you. So kind of like the whole bottom line is, you really want to have it work for you. And Greg, I have no idea what the question was you asked me, so hopefully I answered it. Because I got into
I've lost track of the question quite a while back.
I just totally lost it.
Oh, that is the perfect way to end this podcast.
That was
That
awesome.
is awesome. Byron, where can new agents and established agents, where can people find you, coach you, get inside your brain, get that knowledge out and go make whatever they want to make in their lives and careers and everything else? Because like I said, guys, I've had the opportunity to coach personally with Byron. I work with his wife, Bernice, with doing articles. There is not a single conversation that I have with either of these amazing humans that I am not literally walking away licking my wounds because I'll have said something or done something. And then I'm like, damn it. But I become better at it. And Byron, actually, you guys were kicking around in my brain this morning on another subject. And I'm like, okay, wait, what they tell me again? Okay, yeah, I got to do this. Okay. So where can they get a hold of you?
Easy. Just go to realestatecoach.com and you can find me in there. That's easy to find. Also, Greg, one of the things that, Matt, one of the things that I always do, and I've done this forever and ever, is I give complimentary coaching sessions. The reason for that is because it's really crucial that if you're going to hire a coach, you need to hire a coach that fits you.
Yeah.
I mean, look, just because someone is really well qualified or they're really successful or fill in whatever really adjective you want to have in there, the crucial piece is you got to find someone who works well with you. And that's the reason I do complimentary coaching sessions. I'll do it for anybody who shows up. More than happy to do it.
Well, Byron, everyone else is screwed because I've already booked you out for the next month every single day. So sorry, guys. Sorry, guys.
Wait. Except for I have golf on Tuesdays, Fridays, Sundays, and sometimes Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And that is my story, and I'm sticking to it.
That's right. Specifically, whenever Greg's calls are scheduled, that's when the golf will be happening.
Oh my God, I love you too. Not so much anymore. Okay, Matt, where can people get a hold of you?
Just go to microfamousbook.com. You can get the copy of the physical book for free if you cover the shipping. It's the best place to go. You can also go check out the Microfamous podcast, where it is me solo talking about. I know, Greg. It's Gregless. It's a Gregless podcast, but it's all about if you're in the coaching consulting space, that podcast is for you. So check that out.
Don't worry, guys. It's extraordinarily dull. It's perfect. No, in all joking aside, now Matt, I've heard the shows. They're really, really, really good. Matt really does some good deep dives. I would highly recommend it. I listen to it every time I'm on the toilet. So, just for you, buddy.
This is the worst. This is just the worst. Greg, how do people reach out and connect with you? Make it stop.
All right, guys, go ahead and just DM me on Facebook. I'm easy to get there. I can send a video or audio response back to you guys if you have any questions, thoughts, theories, or concerns. Matt and I, we had some really cool stuff. We got some. Matt doesn't even know some of the stuff that I've been putting together behind the scenes, what people are going to be getting, and how they're going to be able to be when they join our EXP team. I'm using a new company called Clever. They're exclusively with our EXP team. Guys, we're doing cold text messaging. I just got a $1.8 million listing off of one cold text message, and it's because of the way they've set their systems up and had their follow-ups and everything else. It is insanity. So if you want to talk about how to make more money, join EXP. Come call me and we'll talk about it. And then just call me. I'm generous. I'm a giver. I have a heart, not Matt. He has a piece of coal. I will talk to you. Call me 925 915 1978. I love
people can message me on Facebook too. That's fine. Facebook.com/getmicrofamous.
Oh,
I was just thinking
you can't
about that
find me on Facebook. You don't DM me on Facebook.
I feel like you mentioned
I'll
that.
never
Yes.
see it.
Yeah, exactly. Byron is available by coaching call only.
Oh my God. Okay, Matt, do your job. What kind of color should we put on this call? Podcast.
Let's go with cobalt. Feeling cobalt. Yeah, it's kind of a nice cobalt bow upon this episode. Wrap it up.
All right, guys, there it is. Go give us a rating and review on iTunes. Give us a 5-star, not a 2-star. It helps put up the algorithm so more people can see us. Write us a favorable review. Mention Byron in there if you got value from him, because we love him. You should love him. We all love him. All right, guys, thanks for your time. We love you to pieces. Until next time, peace out, ninjas. We gone.